Okay. I'm going to introduce these amazing ladies, Chookangee, Tláa, and Geich, sharing with echoes of wisdom shaping the next 20 years of education. All right.
Who did it? There we go. Geich, I apologize. We're running on Mischa time. That's just the way it is. Thank you, guys. We just know we're going to be passing some things around. I know either you're here because you were inspired this morning, or you really liked our ChatGPT title we made, and that's what lured you in here. But know ahead of time, we are going to have you guys getting up and moving and talking. So in the teacher world, I know this is like, oh God, I gotta go. You can put your cell phone. So just know, it is coming. Don't nest too much in your seat, okay? That's my advice. And I'm gonna see if I can move down there, if this is gonna go. There we go, we'll see. Do we have to be in the microphone, or can we just talk? Just talk, right? So take that microphone there. Take this one? Okay. Mic check. I don't know if it's, oh, there we go. Okay. That's my introduction, Chookangee Tláa. I'm Shungu Katie. Oh, you guys missed it. Okay, I'm Shungu Katie. There we go. My mom is Carmen Quinto Plunkett. There we go. My grandma was Bessie Quinto. My grandpa was Marcelo Quinto Sr., so that means my uncle is Marcelo Quinto. So then you're like, oh, it's a knee slapper. All right. Did it go? No.
She needs cute words.
Where did it go? There we go. I'm going to have to put it on this. There you go, Jasmine.
Oh gosh, I should have went first. I'm Jasmine James, Geich, SOK. I'm from Yakutat. I am Geich Kagwantan. If you've been to Yakutat or done anything in Yakutat, you probably know my mom, Penny James, and my dad, Daryl James. Thank you. My grandparents are Lorraine Adams and Bert Adams. So. I love the precedent that Mischa set.
You started something.
Well, it all makes sense, right?
Yes, once you know. So we did actually, this was not a ChatGPT title. I was just kidding. But so we called this Echoes of Wisdom. We do a lot of work. We have both, if we want to sit there and combine, we look young, we're old in spirit. But we've both been in so many different realms of education that I think it makes us look older than we are. But basically, the Echoes of Wisdom was we've both kind of just been on this journey, this parallel journey together, and doing our own research, our own passions, our own desires for innovation and change. And a lot of that comes down to this research that we go back to. And we have just been seeing, it almost feels like we're kind of seeing the same thing over and over again, right? And that's not a critique. It's beautiful, right? Because a lot of times those are things that are coming to us that we can't even explain where they come from. They just come to us because that's what they're supposed to do. And so that's good. It's good that we're doing this and we want these things and we want this change over and over again. But there comes a point in time where we have to start holding ourselves accountable to the genius that we share, right? So the Echoes of Wisdom is basically built around that idea that we've been sharing these ideas. We've been trying to do X, Y, and Z. We did X, Y, and Z before colonization. Now we need to do something about it. And we need to keep carrying forward all the greatness that existed before us. And so we stand here now as educators. We work for Tlingit and Haida. Oh gosh, I forgot to say that. My bad. I work for Tlingit and Haida. Everybody stands up. And so we are in these positions now where we want to carry forward your voices and the voices of the past. And so that, to us, is everything we've built our lives off of, and our passions are these echoes of wisdom. So know there's a lot of research out there, and we focused in on a certain event from 1983. So Think right now, you have 1 minute, talk to your partner, and try and think about what was happening 1980s, early 1980s in Southeast Alaska related to education. Because I see greatness in here. Let's see. Okay, who wants to take a guess? 80s. Great music, even better Native education. What was it? What was going on in the early 80s? Ooh. Ooh. Celebration. I know, huh? Yeah, celebration. Moieties, absolutely. We still knew those, right?
The first thing my grandma asked me, my first marriage, what moiety is he?
That's
Raven
right.
or eagle? And I said eagle. That's good, she said.
Yeah. Good job, absolutely.
And we have a cultural center at Sitka National Historic Park.
That opened around that time, like it existed in the 80s?
I know.
Ooh.
So, does anybody disagree?
I think that's 70s. Dang.
70s, okay.
And you said Gathering of Elders. Now we're getting there. Now we're getting there.
The search board was being trained for the first time by a professional board trainer, and they brought their indigenous knowledge with them. At that time, they told the CEO what to do. He didn't tell us what to do.
Nice.
They were so strong, so
Yeah.
smart, and wonderful.
That's beautiful.
Indigenous knowledge.
Absolutely.
Western.
Absolutely. Goodness. Geich. All right. All of this sets the context for one specific event we're going to highlight. This does not mean it's the best event, okay? Far from that. It was just one that we have kind of like hooked into and have just stuck with. And that was in 1983, there was an event held in Juneau, out at the University of Alaska Juneau campus, called the Southeast Alaska Conference on Alaska Native Education. I think that's the exact terminology. Did I get the acronym right? There we go. Yeah, Southeast Alaska Conference on Alaska Native Education. It was hosted by Tlingit and Haida, Sea Alaska Heritage Foundation, Juneau School District, A&B, ANS, and UA Juneau. All in the same space. All working towards the same thing, right? Sharing space, sharing story, but what we got from this that we're gonna share with you guys is sharing the recommendations. And so know that Alaska Native education always existed, will always exist. I can tell by the people in this room, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. It always just has to morph and look differently, you know, as time goes. And during the 80s, it was that point of like self-determination, right? Y'all were fiery and feisty, and children were growing up in that time, and it was beautiful. And everybody was kind of just moving forward under that guise of like organizing, right? Advocacy, policy, movement, voice. All of that was going on during that time. I won't tell you whether or not I was born. So those are just some of the other policies. BIE education, there was Johnson O'Malley funding, right? There's Title VI funding, Title VII, Title IV, whatever title it wants to be called. You know, that honestly is some of the most consistent funding is actually through school districts. Then eventually the start of ANEP funding. But what we just passed out was the Elders Traditional Education Checklist, and that came out technically a year later, but was probably already in the works beforehand, okay? So hopefully you had some time to look at that. And basically we wanted you guys to see that because we're not here to talk about what we need to teach, right? We're not here to talk about the content. We've been doing that a lot. We know, right? We know what we want to teach. And that list was originally made in the 80s. It's been updated. It was also updated as part of the tribal college movement in the early 2000s, right? And so all of these processes. So this one's been, there are probably things that can be added to it, but I want you to take that home and say to yourself, like, we know what we want to teach. We need to focus on how right? How are we going to get it in the spaces? How are we going to move it forward? How are we going to do this together? Okay? You want to hop into this one? Yeah. Yeah. So one of the lead organizers at this time was Dr. William Demmert. And we don't have enough time to devote to his biography and the efforts that he did. And we don't have enough time to recognize every individual person there. Those are big names on the board. That's why I keep coming back to this event, right? And that's what was happening at all of these different organizational meetings and advocacy. We had big names there, right? And the genius that's shared and the power that's shared. And we'll try and make sure that Sharing Our Knowledge Conference reposts this PDF so that everybody reads this and everybody has a chance to see and hear this story and visualize all of these people in this place together. Dr. William Demmert was able to organize so that representatives from the Office of Indian Education came over, from the federal government, the Alaska Commissioner of Education, people from the Alaska Department of Education were there. This was a huge event, but it was small at the same time, right? Like the power behind it is huge, but the actual grouping was pretty small. This wants to go backwards. Echoes of wisdom, get it? So a couple, yeah, my mom would be proud of that one. So just so you know, like if you read through it and you take the time to read through it, you can hear those voices. And I didn't have enough time to put on the slides. Isabella Brady was one of the voices that's represented in there. Very powerful. She actually was like, problem solver. And in hers, she just goes straight to, this is what we need to do. These are my specific recommendations. Other people talk about how we raise up our kids, how we teach them through those methods, how they were raised, how this looks in school, et cetera. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. Highly recommend. Dr. William Demmert says the educational process must be the root for creating a culture, society, and technology that not only feeds a person, but also keeps him caring, her caring, and belonging. And another one that was there, Dennis Demmert. The system must reflect, reinforce, and further the cultures of the students that attend. The educational system must belong to them. There must be a sense of ownership. The system must have meaning. It should be directly related to what a student will become. There must be expectations. There must be pride in doing a good job, pride in teaching, and pride in learning a task well. At minimum, the culture of the community and its people must be compatible with the culture of the educational system and its students. This was over 40 years ago, before some of us were born. But for some reason, these voices are not circulating fast enough and far enough still, right? We aren't losing momentum, but we're not acknowledging the momentum we had before, right? And for that, I see empowerment in that. And that's what I'm hoping we can do here.
See how she did that? She just... All right, so we took some time and we went through all of these recommendations from the 1983 Southeast Education Conference on Alaska Native Education. And so around the room, we have some posters, and Mischa's handing them out, of all of the recommendations, the discussions that came out of this gathering of giants. And what they hoped for us, what wasn't working then, over 40 years ago. And some of them might be a little familiar as to what still isn't working now. And so we kind of wanted to come back to this and look at the recommendations that were given. Do some reflection about what has been done since these recommendations were given. So as I was able to read through these again, I was like, oh, that sounds like this program or that committee or this curriculum that I have seen in my educational journey. as a teacher. And so we want to look at the culture and identity and what the recommendations from the Alaska Native Education Committee was for our youth in the educational school system. Looking at family responsibilities in the educational process. So how engaging are we being with our families in school systems? What did it look like 40 years ago? What does it look like right now? Where might we want to refocus that energy and effort of, as it was said earlier this morning, just going into the classroom, just showing up for our students, for our teachers, on the site council, and being in all of those places and encouraging our families to be there. Of course, the curriculum, I feel like there's always curriculum. So all of us have worked on curriculum, have new curriculum. Sometimes it goes and sits somewhere and nobody gets to use it, which is my frustration with that one. And looking at how does it go from just individual pockets of work that's being done into something that is systemic. And so something that you don't have to go search for if you're a brand new teacher, or if you're in the needs to know circle. Recommendations on effective schooling in a cross-cultural setting. So this is right when bilingual and bicultural was what it was called in these recommendations for the cultural settings, and what is effective in classrooms and in rural communities. The roles of private colleges. I also added on our future discussion around that recommendation of just higher ed and secondary opportunities for our youth and young adults. And then the educational problems and strategies for change. So, and I love that that was the way that this was written. So the way that we frame things makes a huge difference in the way that we approach things. So educational problems and the strategies for change. So I've been traveling and conferencing, and while Mischa and I get to work together at Tlingit and Haida, we're not in the same space. They were smart enough not to do that for the everyday. But we were catching up last night, and I got to hear about just the powerhouse children that she has, and how she showed up at site council, and then there's her little, because she's the site council representative for TCLL. And so they were given the opportunity to sit in these conversations and have discussions that impact them as individual students in that program. And when asked, it's like, oh, do you have anything to share or any problems that you want to bring to us as the site council? And this young lady, my niece, so I'm going to not only brought the problem up to site council, very articulated and clear that they, as sixth graders, wanted lockers, but she also came with the solution. So this is a problem, something that's not working for us, and here's the solution. I think that if we were able to fundraise in this way, that we could fund our own lockers. And so then that was just so powerful to me that even this little sixth grader could show up in a space with adults, address the problem, and also come with a solution. So I was just blown away, so super proud. But that's what's happening. And that is the future that is growing in some of these programs that are standing on the shoulders of these giants, of the work that has been done thus far. And so I'm going to challenge you all as we work through these and think about our educational problems that stem from decades ago and that we may still be facing right now, but to come up with the strategies for change as well, so that we are action-oriented, so that we are also coming with the solutions and working together on that. Okay. Okay, so this is the guided discussion part, so you're gonna have to talk to the people next to you. So what you should have on your sheet, right, is your, I want you to do a quick review, take a look at it. You might wanna write with a pen. We have some if you need them. And I want you to determine which recommendations have been met. So take a look through and it's like, oh yeah, I've seen that happening in my community or in our region. And determine which recommendations have not been met. So over the last 40 years. So give them a little circle so that we can focus on them. So I'm gonna step away from the mic for a second so that you can take the time to kind of look through these. And then after you've had the time to kind of take a look at them and see which ones have been met, which ones maybe have not, and then we'll do some discussion with them. Okay, so I don't want to rush anyone. I'm working on my wait time. It's been a while. But as you're going through these, and if there are any of these recommendations that you want to make sure that are carried forward, that you want to focus on, or you think should be a focus moving forward, you can put it on your sticky note of which recommendation that we should carry forward now. So what are some of the things that are unmet at this point? Or maybe they have started, but they haven't really progressed or come to full fruition. So around the room, you might have noticed, so on your little sticky notes, because we're going to collect all of this information and all of the valuable knowledge in this room. And so around the room are posters for each of these themed recommendations. So if you have one in culture and identity of something that you feel that really needs to be moved forward and focused on or prioritized, please put that on the poster on the wall for culture and identity. So I've kind of lined them up on this side of the wall. So culture and identity starting up front, and then curriculum, effective schooling, cross-cultural settings, and on the back two doors on the back wall, the secondary education and educational problems and strategies. So, and feel free to discuss with your neighbors and talk it out a little bit and then put them on sticky notes. So, and when you're ready, I invite you to get up and go place them on their poster. Okay. Hopefully we had some good conversations about the recommendations, some reflection on recommendations that have been met, maybe what programs there were, and then those that aren't, or we want to ensure that we prioritize moving forward, which is our next conversation in shaping the next 20 years. Like, where do we want to focus in the next 20 years on these types of recommendations?
Okay, so as you guys kind of decompress for just a minute before we get you going on your next activity, we really want this kind of a space now to move towards systems change and systems alignment, right? And it takes getting to a different level of thought, but it's definitely a level of thought that we have all had in some shape or form. And so this desire comes out of the fact that there were so many organizations that were operating in the 60s, 70s, 80s, right? When Jasmine and I became teachers in 2017, there was nothing for us. There was no Southeast Alaska Native educators in existence. There was no Elders Council. There was no tribal college group. There was none of this stuff. And we had to navigate this by ourselves. And so we want to think of how these are different recommendations. We want you guys thinking at that systems level of organization, because that's what our teachers need. It's what our children need. It's what our parents need. It's what our tribes need, right? This is what's going to move us forward, because this is what is missing right now. We have curriculum. We have Tlingit speakers. We have the most amazing teachers in these classrooms, and they are starting to leave. And that's the reality. We have to make systems change if we are going to move forward. So think about those recommendations you just put on those Post-its that are now magically away from you, and you're gonna see some new ones. When you look at those recommendations, I want you to start thinking, how could we codify them into law? What kind of policy, where would that policy live that needs to support this? Is it at the state level, the federal level, the tribal level, the school district level, the school board? What implementation, what policies need to be in place in organizations? And what accountability do we need? That's the level we want to think at, because we need to start thinking big, okay? Is everybody getting there? Did I lift you guys into that space? I know a lot of times we avoid it, but we're going to be in it, okay? All right, here we go, Jasmine.
Okay, so Mischa set us up for systems thinking. So we're thinking big. We're thinking more than our isolated pocket in our own little classroom or our own little school, or just our program that we're working in our tribal organization. And we're thinking about what we can do together to really move some of these things forward, right? So I would like us to now identify what is needed to move these priorities forward. So think about who is needed, who needs to be at the table, who needs to be having these conversations, who needs to be engaged if they're not currently engaged in moving this forward. Is it the clans, tribes, village, our local school districts, all our state and federal? What level or all levels do we need to be engaging? So, and then also, how do we strengthen the support around these people that are doing the work? For you who are doing the work, like, what supports do you need? Who do you need to have in your corner, lifting you up, being encouraging with you, maybe connecting you to some funding sources? So that we can have sustainable change and systems alignment. So looking across the board, across Southeast, across our different schools, so that the amazing thing that is happening in Hoonah City schools can also be happening across Southeast. Or the amazing things that are happening in TCLL are shared out and not just in TCLL. So those things that all kids could be benefiting from. So again, on your Post-it notes, and with the conversations with your elbow partners and who you're sitting close to, you have your visual cue up here, your little Post-it note of, write on it, your recommendation priority. What do you need to meet that recommendation, or who? And then, if you want to, you can also put your contact information on there. So maybe you're already doing this. Maybe you already have a program. Maybe you are already working towards these, or you just wrote this most amazing grant to move this forward on one of those recommendations. If you want to, you can put your information out there, because we are sharing our knowledge, and we are trying to make this a systemic approach and bust out of our little silos so that we can support one another. Did I miss anything? Back on the posters, right?
Yeah, you'll put it back on the sheets. So if you want to get up and grab your elbow partner, you're welcome to also walk up to some of these different themes and read what other people were putting there and have larger group conversations if you want as well. But start thinking about the needs. It takes lots of brains to think this. This is a 2 to 5 brain project right now. So, and we'll float around and answer any questions. Okay, we are gonna start wrapping up, but that's only because there's another session coming. We are going to leave these posters up, hopefully for the duration of the conference. I'm hoping you guys can help carry your voices forward and encourage some other people at the conference to add to it, to look at it, and let's see if we can keep building this together. It's going to take a lot of work, and we will make sure that we share this out afterwards, because this isn't our knowledge. This is what we're sharing with each other, okay? So our final slides. We're coming back to echoes of wisdom, and I really hope you guys know that what you put pen to paper, the conversations you had here, these are our echoes of wisdom, right? In 40 years, hopefully, we've held ourselves accountable to what we want to get done, and they'll be saying the same thing about us in 40 years and checking our work, right? And holding us accountable, because that's what we can move forward. I'm going to leave with Jasmine and I, we have a favorite quote. I'm going to tell you my favorite quote, and then we're going to wrap up with a little personal story real fast. This is in that document, that PDF document. ANS Grand President said, "We can no longer be conference Indians. We have to do something about what we learned." So you have our commitment. We work for Tlingit and Haida. We didn't put our emails up here, but we'll get them out. We work for Tlingit and Haida. When we got into teaching, we told all of our teacher peers, our student teachers that were there with us, we promised them, we said, let us be your sounding board. Let us be the bridge to help you be culturally inclusive in your classrooms, to be culturally responsive. And here we are, 8 years later, and we're moving forward and we're moving up. So now, let us carry our voices forward together, okay? If you trust us with this information, we will move it where it needs to be moved. It's not ours. It's all our communities. We are going to make a change. This isn't a grant. This is our children's future. Geich.